everyone. Welcome to Project Herpetoculture podcast. I'm your host, Roy Arthur Blodgett, and I'm joined as always by my intrepid co-host, Philip Leitz of Arids Only. We have an excellent show for you today, but before diving in, we have some brief housekeeping. So first, I'd like to thank Dylan and the Animals at Home Network for hosting our show. It continues to be a pleasure to be part of this platform. We'd also like to extend special gratitude to Charlie, who generously edits our audio and has done a lot to improve the quality of our show over time. And we'd also like to take a moment to tell you about our sponsors. So first, we have Custom Reptile Habitats, who have been with us since day one. They produce top-of-the-line PVC reptile enclosures, and I use them for a lot of the large format vivaria here. They're also carrying universal rocks, misking products, and a bunch of other useful stuff. So if you're in the market for any of that and you're planning to make a purchase, consider doing so through the link in our bio or description. We'll receive a small commission at no additional cost to you, and that really helps us keep the lights on over here.
Up next, we have Fairy Tale Dragons. That's the joint venture between Heather Moy and Ron St. Pierre, both of whom have achieved legendary status in herpetoculture. They've accomplished quite a lot and produced some of the finest bearded dragons and taliqua in the country, alongside a whole host of other species such as emerald tree boas and green tree pythons. Check them out if you're in the market for any of that, and be sure to follow along with them on social media. They're always up to something interesting over there.
Next, we have Cold-Blooded Caffeine, roasters of delicious coffees from all over the globe. We have a private label with them, the PH Blend, which is a light roast coffee from Rwanda. It's a great choice for those who prefer a more floral coffee with notes of berry, but they have a wide variety of options for a broad array of preferences. So check them out. And if you place an order, don't forget to use the code PROJECTHERP for 10% off.
We're also very pleased to have the support of Exoterra, a brand that needs no introduction. It's safe to say that herpetoculture wouldn't be where it is today without the influence of Exoterra. For decades, they've been industry leaders in innovation, offering just about everything needed for reptile care, from diets and supplements to enclosures, substrates, and lighting. We're both big fans of their naturalistic terraria and substrates in particular. They have a lot of interesting products in the works as we speak, and we're really looking forward to seeing what comes next.
And next we have Tamura Designs. For those in the know, Tamura Designs is widely regarded as one of the finest enclosure manufacturers on the planet. They produce outstanding large format vivaria with endless options for customization, drains, UV printed backgrounds, lighting rigs. On top of all of that, they also make amazing deli cup displays for expos and these incredible multi-unit condos, which I use here. So if you're interested in any of that and you decide to make a purchase, use the code Herpetoculture for 15% off one item as a special offer to our listeners only. We also have Happy Dragons. We're really thankful to have the support of Happy Dragons. They are producing some amazing content for bettering our reptile care. And we've been actually partnering with them to produce even more content like webinars. Also, the platform and subscription service offers breeder access to first clutches, things like that. We have online courses coming down the pipeline. In addition, we have live Q&As with reptile experts, such as Mariah Healy from Reptiphiles. It's truly an outstanding subscription package that also offers discounts on their supply partners, such as Ovipost and Joss's Frogs. It's really an outstanding product. So check it out. And let us know what you think.
And last but not least, if you're interested in supporting the show directly with something of a tip or a monthly donation, check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/projectherpetoculture. We have a monthly live chat there with all of our paid subscribers. That's been a whole lot of fun so far. We also have a whole line of merchandise like t-shirts, mugs, pint glasses, and more on our website. And of course, sharing the show with a friend, subscribing on YouTube, and keeping up with social media is always very helpful.
And with all that said, we're on to the show. Thanks, everybody. All right, everybody. This is episode number 82. We've made it this far.
Crazy.
And we're doing just a one-on-one tonight. Just Phil and myself. And a little bit of a state of the union. What's new? So, Phil, you want to take the reins?
Yeah, for sure. So before we hit the record button, we were talking about
like move, things that move the needle in herpetoculture. So like, I was talking about how we'll really frequently get questions like, you know, what's the what's the humidity, like the moisture to medium ratio for your incubation containers, and like what's, like how often are you supplementing and with what exact supplements, and what's the gram weight of your yearling ornates, and it's like I don't even weigh or measure most of my animals ever. Like, occasionally I'll be like, I wonder how long this guy is, and I'll measure him, or like I'll be like, oh, I wonder how much this baby Egyptian hatchling weighs, and I'll weigh it. But like, I don't track the weight and the length of my individual animals. Like, at least not really. Like, it doesn't. I don't feel it just doesn't interest me. Like, it's just an uninteresting metric because I feel like it's also not necessary. Like I don't need to know how big a yearling ornate is because if they're visually healthy, they're visually healthy. Now, obviously, getting data is a good thing, and like data visualization matters, and like getting aggregate data can offer a lot of information. I'm not denying that. But some of these other things, they just don't really move the needle in herpetoculture. Like it's, there's a range at which there's a range of conditions under which any kind of animal egg will hatch. You know what I mean? But it's very rarely is it going to be this one super narrow band. It's usually going to be like a pretty diverse range of conditions upon which something can hatch and hatch a viable, healthy baby, because that's adaptive. That makes sense. And so like what the exact moisture ratio of the medium I'm using does not matter. It doesn't really, it's not going to improve your keeping. It's not going to make you a better breeder. It's not going to increase the hatch rate of your eggs. Like I just don't buy any of that. Like if the eggs are good, they're going to hatch, And so it's like, it's more important to just to move the sort of foundational levers of, like the dials that if you turn them, you're going to get the most effect. Those are the things that matter so much more, like having a big, wide variety and range of lighting and heating and temperature conditions, right? Having a big, wide range of like various shelters and various foods and various interesting things, and then letting the animals choose what they want more of and less of. Like that's so much more of a, again, if we're talking about like things that are really going to move the needle, like
Right.
that's going to move the needle. I'm going to turn my light on, but go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I'm of a pretty similar mind with this thing. I don't really focus a whole lot on like the metrics of like, the exact temperatures, the exact humidity. I think that establishing gradients and then refining from there is typically the way to go. And especially with stuff that, a lot of the stuff that you and I keep is stuff that, the books haven't necessarily been written on yet. And we're still really exploring what's potentially optimal for them. So
yeah,
I'm totally of a similar mind with it. And I think that also I don't know. I think that, I like what you said about the eggs, where it's like, there's a wide range of conditions. And also I think in some ways, it's important for our animals to experience some variation in their conditions that they're kept in, I think, or the environmental parameters and stuff that they're kept under, to cultivate some resilience and adaptability. I think that there's in some ways potentially a disservice to keeping them in very narrow and tightly constrained standards. That makes sense.
Oh, it's also probably profoundly boring. I mean, Jesus
yeah,
Christ,
I think that too. Yeah, I mean that's part of the health that I'm talking about. I don't mean just physical health, but also mental health. It's like it's so important.
Did I show you this? Did I show you this picture of this? I put together this like totally different ornate uromastic setup.
Yeah, you did.
This where it's treating it like an arboreal, like a tree monitor, basically,
like a whole bunch of grapevine and
manzanita, and a lot of this was inspired because It's been documented. Like actually, okay, this is cool. Lindsay Pike, who is one of the early kind of Uromastyx pioneers, he's
Yeah.
been in culture for a long time. He
Yeah.
wrote, he did a lot, some real early first breedings, some really like putting together some early care sheets and putting together a lot of research on these things. He sold me some of my first Uromastyx back with like Douglas Dix and a handful of these other guys about
Hmm.
20 years ago, like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
crazy to think about. I got on the phone with him the other day,
Cool.
and some of the stuff we were relaying back and forth is, some of the species names have changed, but we were talking about
Hmm.
how, you know, it's been known for a really long time that species like Ornata, Yemenensis, Ocelota, Philbii, Princeps, McFadeni, some of these animals, like they're basically a semi-arboreal reptile. Like
Hmm.
they're not just hanging out on, they're not boulder obligates, right? They're not
Right.
like a collared lizard or a chuckwalla or a, something like that. Like they're very adept climbers, both on stone, cliff sides, and trees, like acacia trees and
Hmm.
various, pretty big climbing surfaces, right? And so describing them as a terrestrial lizard just obviously feels like it's just not correct. It feels weird, but that is the way they are so often set up and housed. And I've always like thought about increasing the amount of vertical space for those species in particular because of how well they can climb. But
Hmm.
like never really put my money where my mouth was. And then I saw a mutual friend of ours, Dean Wilson, uh,
Yeah.
he of Lizard Cabinet, I think is his Instagram.
Yeah.
He made these brilliantly constructed enclosures that are like replicas of either some of the impressive landmarks from where some of those animals
Hmm.
come from, or are just like really cool, just interesting, diverse setups for them. And
Yeah.
it's included some like 3 or 4 foot tall manzanita, like 3 foot tall manzanita for some of his young Yemenensis and stuff like this. And he was like sharing that with me and sharing that on some of his social media. And I was like, damn, that's cool. Like that has to be so good just so good for them. So I set up this big Exoterra that I have with one of my yearling male Uromastix ornata, where it's basically all grape wood and manzanita. I think there's no cork in there, but regardless, it's just like this piled all 3 feet of that with just full of this wood, and then I secured a few pieces of roof tile up under some of the heat lights so he can get like real hot, really hot, and then just let him rip, bro. He is. It took him like a day to kind of get used to it. He was like, "Whoa, this is sick," Like he was like, "This is cool," but it took him a minute to kind of get his sea legs. But now that he's got him, oh man, he that is a ripping lizard, dude.
Mm.
He's really digging it. So I'm thinking, uh, I'm gonna. I don't know exactly what this is gonna do, but it's cool, and it's definitely going to inform my keeping going forward. Like I know that not only is this going to encourage me to give more surface area and just like more climbing opportunity to all of those animals broadly, but it also kind of inspires me to set up like, like a playground of sorts, like a legitimate, just like a huge, I kind of just want to take like a big old empty bin, like a big trough of some kind and just pile it with shit and just
Yeah.
let them, just rotate them in there once in a while, let them fuck around and get exercise and have fun and just explore, find food. I mean, I bet it's just got to be so great for them.
Yeah, totally. I think so. I
Yeah.
mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Have you had like what kind of like new things are happening over there in terms of like eggs,
Oh man. Yeah.
animals? What's
Yeah.
like what are the kind of
Yeah.
updates?
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Great question. So, I know that I think most people kind of think of me as like a purely Uromastyx guy, but I feel like I have a pretty diverse collection of reptiles. I
Yeah.
keep a lot of weird lizards, like a lot of just super weird lizards. So
Along with Uromastics, I have a pretty strong passion for Xenogama taylori, which is those little shield-tailed agamas. A pretty big crew of those. And then I also have been working with chuckwallas, and I'm doing a pretty good. I've bred several color varieties or locality varieties rather of chuckwalla, and I have a granite group right now, and I had a couple of weird things happen with them where the kind of the primary older female laid eggs kind of at the beginning of the season, and then she double clutched and laid another clutch of eggs very recently, and she laid her eggs on the day that her first clutch hatched, and
Wow.
and then her daughter laid a clutch of eggs the day after she laid hers, and
Wow.
in the same nesting location, but not as deep. So they had like this big long trough under which they could get under and dig. And the mother laid her eggs at the very back, and then the daughter laid her eggs like kind of in the middle, which was
Hmm.
um and then
That's cool.
yeah, it was really cool. And then I saw a new observation in the chucks that I'd never seen before. So historically, I have very regularly put my baby chuckwallas when they would hatch. I put them in with their parents. You find chuckwallas very regularly in big groups on rock piles in the
Hmm.
wild. You find adults, babies, subadults, everybody's sort of commingling in their own way.
Yeah.
I thought this would be sort of a natural thing, and it's always worked out well until it didn't. This time, where I put in a clutch of babies and noticed one of them with a missing half of its tail gone. So I was like, oh no,
Mm.
like there must have been some aggression. So I grabbed him, pulled them all out. I'm down one animal, and
Wow.
I think it got eaten by either the male or the other one of the other females in there. And I'd never heard of any kind of cannibalism in chuckwallas. I've never seen that happen. Never had anything like that go down. So that was it was obviously devastating and a
Yeah.
little wild, but that's information. I had no idea that
Yeah.
happened. Um, so split them out and won't do that again, I guess.
Hmm.
It's just the wrong move. I put together, I have these Schneider skinks, Ulysses
Hmm.
Schneideri, that I've been keeping for a little while now. And I bred them last year accidentally. I just got them, they made it.
Hmm.
And then one of the females laid 3 eggs. All 3 eggs hatched. They hatched in 30 days of incubation, which was super weird.
Wow.
Yeah, but they
So
were
short.
really fast, and the babies were just rockets, just healthy, crushing
Hmm.
it. Um, it was so short. I didn't know that would happen. It was super weird, and they're all doing really, really well. But I recently discovered I had no idea, but they'll crush pinkies and quail, and I had no idea that they would do that. I was like, okay, that's super weird. I didn't. That was a real trip. Um, the I have Egernia striolata, which is the Australian tree skink, and the male and the female, they're in there with one of their offspring from last year, and they mated. So, and that was about 5 weeks ago or so, or
Hmm.
4 weeks ago. So, sort of expecting that female. She looks huge, so she'll probably give birth at some point. Uh,
Awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
which is super exciting. I recently had the first clutch of red-sided butterfly agamas, Leolepis rubertaniata. That clutch of 6 hatched, and the babies are brilliant, just brilliant
Mm.
brushers. So smart and just one of the most fun things to tongue feed you've ever seen. They're like they act like little ackies. They just have the same kind of,
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
ferociousness, and they're so smart, like they're really relaxed compared to their parents are super flighty. Well, okay, they were crazy when they first got here, like absolute
Hmm.
rockets, and they've learned to chill. Like you can almost get in, you can get in, and you can run your finger along their backs, and they'll kind of just skitter
Hmm.
away. But they don't bail, they don't flee, they don't duck for the hides when you try to grab them. They're really cool.
That's
Um,
awesome.
I was able to I pulled out my group of Pseudocrotylus subviridis, which are this Drakensberg crag lizards.
Hmm.
And when those things came in, I intentionally sought out babies. I just wanted babies. I didn't want
Yeah.
adults. I was like, adults are great, but I bet you babies will transition to captivity a lot easier. You know,
Yeah.
so I ended up with a group of 6 babies, and I thought surely I'll get some decent sex ratio out of these things. And unless there's a suppressed male in there somewhere, it is a single male and 5 females.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's crazy. They are live bearers, and they are beautiful cordylids, really beautiful. They're like a dark brown to near black kind of base coat
Yeah.
with like a limey green yellow and an orange, like a tangerine orange, like painted on their sides and belly.
So beautiful.
They're so beautiful. And they're just now getting to the age where they're actually displaying that color. I've had them for a little over a year, maybe a year and a half, and they're really getting there. And oh man, I can't wait to come into the shop one day and just see babies ripping around because they're
That's
just
so cool.
eventually drop babies at some point. Those things are super cool lizards, and I'm hardly ever see them. But when I do, it's like, oh yeah, look at that. You can even get them to tongue feed through the crevices sometimes, where they'll,
They'll kind of come out just
yeah, they'll
enough to
be like a
grab it.
little, and then pull it right back in. They're like, I'm not coming out anymore. They're really funny.
That's kind of how the Xenosaurus are.
I bet. Yeah. They seem
Yeah,
like,
super similar.
yeah. So there's that. I moved my Egernia Cunningham eye. I have 4 of those guys, and I moved them into one of the huge pens, the 8 by 5 foot pens, because there's 4 of them. That there are just 4 of them, and I don't want to mess up a good thing. I'm afraid to split them up and never be able to put them back together.
Yeah.
No idea what the sex ratio is on those things because they just look like just a big brown lizard.
Yeah.
But they're doing really, really well. One of them is just bold as all hell. Just stays out. Will hand feed roaches. You could pet his chin. He's cool as a cucumber. But all the other 3, they're like, oh, every time you come through, they just rip into the hides. But the one's like, where are you guys running from? He's just, he's like this big dummy. Yeah. So things are going good, man. There's a lot of fun stuff, a lot of cool, strange projects. And, I've got giant butterfly agamas too. Those things are super
Yeah.
weird. And, those are probably some of the most beautiful lizards on earth.
I love those things, man.
Oh, they're incredible.
They're so cool.
Yeah. And, so I'm happy about that crew. They're doing really well. Yeah, Gregor Mendel, my San Esteban Island iguana, he's just happy, crushing his game, hanging out, eating food, being a pissy fuck.
As he must.
Yeah, he's the man. Yeah, he's a spicy meatball, dude.
Yeah.
He is never a big fan. He totally gets that I'm just bringing him food because he follows me when he's like, I'm ready. Let's go. Let's get that food, dude. But as soon as if you touch him, like he lets me like touch his back or his head when he's eating, but he like jolts, like,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
he goes like, hey, but while he's eating, you're like, just relax, bro.
Yeah. Yeah.
But trying to respect his boundaries while also building trust. So, that's pretty funny. How about you though? What's going on in the wacky world of Roy?
Oh man. Well, as you know, I've been super swamped. This is kind of the busiest time of the year for me usually.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've been doing some youth rite of passage trips that I've been helping to guide.
Yeah.
So I just did one of those. I'm doing another one here in a couple of days.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's been pretty wild. I've also been hosting some friends visiting to do some herping, which has been really fun.
Nice.
A couple of friends from the UK that were here for a bit, and then another friend from Kansas that was here. And so took them out and tried to get as many lifers for them as possible. I think we got like 20 species, something like that.
Okay.
Which is pretty good for around here.
Yeah.
And
Very impressive.
actually today I took a kiddo out that I've been mentoring for like, I guess it's probably been about 5 years now. He's really into herping, and I've been kind of mentoring him in that a little bit, just taking him out. And so today we actually went herping and found, I think we had 11 species total today, which was a pretty good day.
Nice. Wow.
Within a pretty small area. So that was pretty sweet.
Great.
Yeah. And yeah, so that's always good. This time of year in California is just, it's kind of the magic moment, like April, May is just,
The
it's
song.
just prime in this part of the state, especially. And so it kind of, it's like a time of year when all I want to be doing is herping and being outside. And it's also the time of the year where I have a lot of work. So it's kind of just like, I feel like I just end up working overtime all the time through this time of year, but it's worth it because it's just so beautiful out, and
Yeah.
a lot of amazing wildflowers blooming. And yeah, it's just like makes me happy to be alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, the herps are doing good. I don't have like a whole ton to report apart from the sulfurious have been courting a lot. So I think I'll probably have some sulfurious eggs again this year, hopefully.
Sweet.
Time will tell, but I've definitely been noticing a lot of just like increased activity level, and like witnessed a bunch of courtship behavior with them. I've still never seen them locked, which is kind of funny. And then just last week, I guess it was, I got a clutch of eggs from a species that I've never bred before called a cutlass, which is another obscure colubrid from the puffing snake complex from Suriname. And yeah, it's pretty sweet. So I've talked about this snake before. He's like a really unique animal because he's like this solid brick red. And then the female I have is the more standard phenotype of the species of kind of an olive green.
Yeah.
And both are wild caught. And I've had them for around 3 years now, or 3 years for the male, 2 years for the female. And so it was sweet to get a good clutch of eggs from them. And exciting too, because I don't know of anyone else currently keeping that species at all. I'm sure there are people out there that have them, but
Sure.
no one that I know of that's working with them. If anyone out there is working with them, I'd love to connect with other people keeping them because they're interesting snakes. But it'll be just an interesting thing to see what the babies are like, what the babies are going to want to eat, all that stuff, because there's no information about that. There's plenty about a couple other species in the same genus, but not that species in particular. So
yeah, that's real
that's
similar.
always fun.
Drakensberg, that's real similar to the crag.
Yeah.
Same kind of deal. There's like a lot about cordylids and some pseudocordylids,
Yeah.
but those guys in particular is
Nothing specific. Yeah.
No, nothing at all. It's fun to kind of like unravel some of those preferences for animals that you really don't know anything about.
Yeah. One of the really interesting ones with this species is that I found that the preferred food for them is just eggs.
Oh, weird.
So I've been feeding them primarily a diet of eggs, of quail, chicken, dove, pheasant, as much a diverse diet of eggs as I can muster.
You just going out and making nests in your backyard like a jerk?
No, I'm not. I'm mostly ordering them. But the funny thing is that like they don't want chicks or quail. They might take them live, but they're not taking frozen thawed of those at all, or drop fed or anything. So I'm like, all right, well, if you guys want to eat eggs, that's fine with me. They seem to be thriving on that diet. So I'm not super worried about it. And it obviously is part of their diet in their native range too. I just didn't expect it to be such a prominent part of their diet, but it's really the thing that they want to eat the most. Wow. So yeah, things are moving along. Yeah, it's just been it's been super hectic. Like I said, just lots of work and nothing else to really report right now. Yeah. I'm looking at some of the herps in the room, trying to see if I'm forgetting anything, but Nothing too notable to mention in that
Yeah.
realm. But
I realized wait, did I already talk about it on the recording with the Euro cage? No, I didn't. That was before we started recording, right?
no, I think you mentioned it because you mentioned Dean's setup, and
Oh
that
yeah, yeah.
was yeah,
Right.
yeah.
That wasn't the recording. Oh yeah. We
This
talked
is
for
what
like an
happens
hour.
when we talked for like an hour before we hit the record
Yeah.
button. We kind of blew it.
Yeah, we really jacked that one up. Whoops. But
That was the good conversation, everybody. No,
this is pretty good.
no, this is good.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, it's definitely things are kind of changing here in advance of my son being born, because it's like I have to try to figure out. I'm gonna have to learn how to be a dad. Oh
Yeah,
man,
dude.
yeah.
Do you anticipate like a lot of changes with like, the collection or with the podcast? I mean, I don't really care about the other parts of your life, but
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Me neither. Um, I don't know. It's funny you mentioned that. I don't feel. I guess I don't really anticipate. I'm not really anticipating anything. I'm just like, can't I? I'm only 37, I guess, which isn't. But my life has changed so much. Just the last 5 years since I met my wife. The 5 years before that. I mean, I feel like every few years I'm just a different person with different. I've said this before, but I don't think I've never been the kind of person where I have like a goal and that like the goal happens, I make it happen. I've been way more responsive to my life. Just kind of like, okay, this will work. I'll go with that. It's been the only thing I can recall ever really like setting out with feeling like this burning intention was getting good at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I was like, oh, I don't care. I don't know what I have to do. I don't care what I have to do. I'm going to do this. And I may never be a world champion. I'm never going to be the best, but I'd be a tough son of a bitch. I can be really tough, super annoying. Like that's about as good as, I'm happy with that. And I remember feeling like that, having really strong thoughts that were like, whatever happens, I have to do this. Like, I don't care, but other than that, I didn't like set out to have a business doing the reptile thing, like it didn't.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is it's like, I don't have any expectations or thoughts or anticipations around my son, because I can't predict anything anyway. I've never been a predictor.
Yeah.
I've never been right.
You're better at the responsive approach rather than the like anticipatory one, which I think is wise.
I mean, it's one way at least, right? It's like, it's the same thing with, I feel like this is also related, this relates to herpetoculture and jiu-jitsu and even the other stuff we've talked about. You and I are both fans of MMA. How many fighters do we know are like response fighters? Like Silva was a response fighter, right? He was a very responsive person. I feel like Floyd Mayweather is a responsive boxer. So you get greatness out of that, but it can also be really boring.
Yeah, totally.
So it's like I don't know. I don't feel like my life is boring at all. It's just I don't know how else to do. I can't imagine living. I can't. God, it just doesn't make any sense to me to be any other way. But I know other people who are super goal driven and like they've got to do this one thing and I've got my eyes set on that and I'm going to go for it, and they're really good at that. It's great.
Yeah,
it's just not who I.
Yeah, there are different ways.
Yeah, it's just not who I am
to do the thing.
I do think I do think I've developed over the years is like a sense of commitment, though. Like I think one of the cool things that I learned from jiu-jitsu and from being an illustrator, when you actually go to art college and you really try to like learn how to be a great visual artist of some variety, where you're doing cast drawings for multiple years and doing life drawings for multiple years, like really, really studying in earnest. and then to the jujitsu thing, and then the herpetoculture thing, it's like, oh, you kind of realize like a lot of this is just staying on something. It's
Mhm.
just don't stop. Like
Yeah.
you don't have to be really good or anything. Just keep going. You know,
Yeah.
just keep doing it. So I feel like that's something I feel like I've learned that makes me feel a lot more confident in like reaching goals, like inside herpetoculture. Like
Mhm.
having those butterfly gammas. It's like those are something where it's like, okay, I know it's probably going to take me a few years and it's going to be difficult. They're going to be kind of annoying to learn about. It's going to be hard to unravel their preferences. They're really intelligent. You can tell that they're rocket fast and really, really bright and whatever. But
Mhm.
I also know that if I know enough about how to take care of stuff that I can figure them out and that eventually I can get them to be comfortable enough to where they'll thrive and maybe eventually they'll breed. And it just feels like that level of commitment to something doesn't feel as hard as it used to, you know?
Yeah.
It used to feel really hard to like stick that out and, look at something as like a 5 to 10 year project. And you're like, I don't know. I don't know. Like, I don't know if I could do that, like I've barely kept up a 6 month project, you know?
Mhm.
So it feels weird to be in a place in my life where I feel like I can confidently say something like that, but that's weird, It's a weird place to be. So, I feel like, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
No, no, you go ahead. Finish your thought.
I was just gonna say that, you know, when you say, oh, it's like a wise way to be kind of like responsive. I think there's a lot of wisdom in being like really proactive and goal driven and assertive. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
accomplish a lot that way, you know? But there
Yeah. I
is
think it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, of course. I think with anything in life, it's like it's possible to be
yeah,
too loose, and to wing it too much. And also I
yeah,
think that it's also definitely possible to be too tight, too wound up
right.
and inflexible.
Yeah,
And I don't know, it just makes me think like I've said this before that some of the best advice I ever got as a young person in my early 20s was never speculate when you can experiment. And I'm sure I've shared that on here before
yeah,
because it's like kind of my favorite life advice, especially for young people, because I think that there's just something to like fucking trying shit, getting
yeah,
feedback,
yeah,
and I think that we vastly overestimate our speculative capacities because
yeah.
we can't anticipate all the variables that are going to come up and so I think that when I say like I think it's a wise approach that I think that that's what I'm speaking to is that like you can speculate about all till the cows come home about what life is going to be like when your son is here,
Right.
and it's not going to be the same
Exactly.
as
Yeah,
when
I'm
your
just
son
not
is
gonna
here.
know I've never done it before. Like, how can you
Yeah,
know?
exactly. You can't
How can
know.
you know if you've
It's
never done
there's
it
just
before?
certain and that's I think that that's most things honestly
Yeah.
are just kind of unknowable until you encounter them, until you experience them. And that isn't to say that there's no value in speculation or planning or anything.
No,
I'm
no,
not
of
trying to say
course.
that, but
No, but you gotta have both.
it's just a yeah, you gotta have both.
You gotta
Yeah.
have both, man.
So
It's like you gotta be willing to you gotta, what's the you gotta know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to
yeah,
walk.
dude, for sure.
So stupid. I
Yeah.
fucking hate that song. But no, but for real though, like it's we talk about it in jujitsu because people get these ideas in their head like, oh, I got to go out on my shield, I got to go hard, and I got to like I'm going to go for submissions.
Mhm.
Just gonna, that's a real warrior. You crazy? That's a good way to get shot. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. It's a
it's like
good way to burn out.
yeah, yeah, it's a good way to burn out. It's a good way to be reckless. It's like there's take some value in
Yeah.
position and slowing everything down and like
Hmm.
really getting into like that minutia, like the idea that if I lose a position, even in training, it's the end of the world,
Hmm.
because it matters, and I feel like in some ways that's true of herpetoculture too. It's like if I can't, there's something about uh, herpetoculture that feels like it's honest in the same way that martial arts is honest, in the sense that like if you don't do it right, you in martial arts you get either punched in the face or you tap or whatever it is.
Mhm.
In herpetoculture, it's like it doesn't work. You
Yeah.
stuff doesn't breed, the stuff doesn't hatch, the stuff doesn't live, whatever it is, like it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
to really have to like plan enough and take it seriously enough to set things up correctly, but also you have to be flexible enough to like respond to them and flexible enough to be willing to experiment and try new things and have an open mind, because you can only progress if you're thinking about it in an open way.
Yeah.
It's,
Totally.
it's funny how they all relate. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's just,
Super weird.
it's like any sufficiently deep craft, it all ties in. You can learn a lot about life from it.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm in an interesting moment right now with like we were talking about this before airing, but just of just realizing that like I'm pretty imminently gonna have to downsize to some extent here with the herps, just because my responsibilities elsewhere in my life are just ever increasing, and um, I'm going to be taking on a new job soon, which hopefully will lend a little bit more stability to my life. But um, there's no like point in the on the horizon where like my schedule is going to get lighter or more manageable.
Yeah.
And there are very few things that I can actually like afford to reduce or like change apart from the responsibilities that I have with the herbs. And so it's kind of a difficult thing, but also at the same time, it feels like it feels really important to me to adhere to my own values and standards in terms of care and husbandry. And I'd rather reduce the size of the collection than reduce the standard of my care. So that seems pretty imminent here. And yeah, man, it's interesting because I think that even just probably 6 months ago, I don't think I would have anticipated that was coming in the way that it just feels very here now.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, just because I think 6 months ago I was leaning into herpetoculture more, and on some level, I think I was considering it too from like a more occupational stance, not as like my bread and butter necessarily, but as something that could contribute to my livelihood, my family's livelihood, and and I feel pretty clear at this point, having experimented with that a little bit, that that's actually not the way forward for me in herpetoculture, which feels good, honestly, to like have that kind of clarity. Because I think if I didn't, I would just be like a big what if.
Sure.
But of course it's bittersweet to think of parting with some of the projects here and all that.
I mean, it's very hard. It's a very hard choice to have to make those kinds of decisions,
Yeah, man.
Understand. But when you're doing it for the right reasons, and the ones that really are going to make a big difference in your life, then you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. That's a good update.
Yeah. What about just a brief touch in on I mean, IHS is approaching. I'm planning to be there next month.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for it. I'm going to be giving a talk about Polycris marmoratus, and Zach and I, mostly Zach, because he's a whirling dervish of passion and enthusiasm for herpetoculture that I can't even keep up with, despite all my enthusiasm for it. Invited kind of curated a really amazing assortment of keepers on the private side of herpetoculture to present at IHS this year, and so I'm pretty excited for that. And and you're doing the reptile talks, aren't you?
I was, but I'm not anymore.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah. It's as it got closer and closer, it's too weird to be away from Rach at this point. Like it's too risky because something were to happen or she had to go. The baby was going to show up, I wouldn't be there, and it just didn't feel right. It didn't feel right to be away. So so no, but that's okay. And I think it'll be a pretty incredible thing one way or the other. So my presence certainly didn't matter. So
well, I don't know about that. It definitely mattered, but it looks like an amazing event. I'm really glad I can't be there.
Right. Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is what it is. And I'm really looking forward to some of the upcoming shows we have. We got some really good ones coming up. Really, really good ones.
Yeah, me too, man.
Yeah,
really some excellent guests, and some other stuff. Hopefully in the works as well. But time will tell. It's a little bit of a hectic moment to make progress on any of that stuff for both of us, but that will change.
Yeah. Times always change.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, I think we probably call it here. It'd be a good way to. I think this is a good little shorty episode.
Just a little teaser for this week.
Yeah.
And we'll be back soon, y'all, with another amazing guest.
Hell yeah!
Thanks for listening to Project Herpetoculture.
Hell yeah.